Jeff, I am as confused as a goat on AstroTurf.
When most people hear the word GOAT, they think of the phrase greatest of all time and reference people like Michael Jackson and Tom Brady, who legitimately are the greatest of all time in their respective fields. However, in the world of Survivor, GOAT has a much different meaning. A GOAT in Survivor refers to somebody who has no shot whatsoever in winning, and is seen as an easy beat at Final Tribal Council for the true contenders. Thus, those true contenders drag the GOATs with them to the end. So for today, let's look at the long history of GOATs in Survivor, and the different types of games these contestants played to end up as a GOAT. I'm going to touch upon all the GOATs in Survivor history as best I can, but mainly just highlight the most important ones. Also, keep in mind, just because a player got blown out at Final Tribal Council, that doesn't mean they're a GOAT, as players like Spencer and Lisa absolutely had a path to victory, but due to circumstances or self-sabotage, they ended up in a spot where they had no chance. Before we begin, don't let me become a 0 subscriber getter GOAT, as hitting that like and sub button would mean a lot for this channel. The first true GOAT in Survivor history was the man who inspired the phrase, Keith Fammy, and the ironic part is, he didn't even end up actually being a GOAT at the Final Tribal Council. In the first true dumb move in Survivor, Colby cost himself the game by taking Tina with him to the end over Keith, simply because he didn't feel a player like Keith deserved to be taken to the end, and he would rather lose the game to a player like Tina as opposed to beating Keith. 99% of Survivor players would take Keith with them to the final two, without even thinking twice about it. But with Survivor being a global phenomenon in 2001, and Colby wanting that hero image, he felt bringing a GOAT with them to the end would be looked down upon by the fandom. We saw a similar case to this the following season in Africa, as Kim Johnson was an easy beat for all the Brawn 3. But when it came down to the final 4, the Brawn 3 men were actually ready to get rid of her, not because they felt like taking her to the end would be unethical, but simply due to the fact that they are closer to one another. Again, if this was modern Survivor, there's a very good chance that we see Kim virtually be guaranteed a spot at the Final Tribal Council, as the Brawn 3 would realize taking her to the end would be the safest bet, thus they would turn on each other. Instead, she was on the outside of the group, but was able to clutch up to win the final 2 immunities of the season, and essentially decide who won Africa.
The 14th person voted out of the tribe. Lex.
But then in Season 5, Survivor Thailand, we got the first example of the GOAT term being used as a legit Survivor strategy. Clay Jordan came into Survivor as an obvious weak link, and realizing he was obviously no challenge beast, nor had much control over Chewy, Clay turned to Brian to protect him when his name was getting thrown around early on. And once Chewy entered the merge with numbers, Clay realized that Brian, who had all the control, would most likely take him to the end over Ted, Helen, and Jan. So, instead of trying to make a big move against the big time player, Clay aligned himself with that big time player in hopes of Brian taking him to the end, to at least guarantee himself a spot in the final 2. This is exactly what happened, as Brian felt Clay was the easiest to beat out of the other 4 Chewy members. However, in a complete shocker, Clay almost beat Brian, and had he answered a couple questions better, or had Brian had one more slip up, Clay freaking Jordan would be a Survivor winner, and possibly come back to win Winners at War. Good God, is that a world I want to live in? Even though nowadays the GOAT strategy is almost universally looked down upon, the first installment of this strategy by Clay was a good look, as he nearly won Survivor Thailand by doing nothing at all, except for appearing to be an easy beat for everyone in the game, when in fact, he had a fighting chance.
You barely won over a guy who literally, and Clay, I know this is fresh and probably hard to be sitting there right now, but you won by 1 vote over a guy who badgered 3 people on the jury and still got 3 of the other 4 votes. You had to be a little surprised that you squeaked this out.
Well, I mean, Clay, he's a very tough competitor, very likable
No, we're not doing this anymore.
The next season, we got one of the more fascinating GOATs in Survivor history in Matt. Matt came into the Amazon, not knowing much about the game, and learned a lot from Rob throughout the season, with the two banding together to make it to day 38 against the mean girl Jenna, who almost quit a couple days prior. And learning from one of the best, Matt pulled a Richard Hatch, stepping out of the immunity challenge, knowing both Rob and Jenna were taking him to the final 2. And when Jenna won the challenge and used her sole vote to eliminate Rob, it looked like Matt would have one of the greatest growth arcs ever, leading to a Survivor victory. But then,
The winner of Survivor Amazon.
we of course saw plenty of moments during the Amazon that made Matthew look bad, like his general cluelessness and the infamous machete incident. But still, his growth edit was far more positive than Jenna's mean girl whiny brat edit that she received. Other than the fact that there were spoilers for this season, I think this was also Survivor's way of showing that GOATs in Survivor don't have to be so one-dimensional, and there can be a lot of positives in a player that ultimately ends up being a GOAT in the end.
It's been such an incredible evolution for me to go from being an underdog and to have everyone gunning for me at every corner, and to eventually learn how to build strategy and make it to the final two, it's almost absurd. But somehow I did it.
The next couple of seasons, we got some of the most notorious GOATs in Survivor history. Lillian notably loses to literally anyone at the merge of the Pearl Islands, as even the pre-jury players hated her, and the reason why they voted her back in was due to not wanting to have to deal with her on the pre-jury trip. Katie against Tom is possibly the most laughable final tribal council pairing ever, as Tom was the leader of the dominant core alliance and won 5 immunities, while Katie got on everyone's nerves, and she received a pretty brutal beatdown by the jury at the final tribal council. Speaking of Palau, the underdog of that season in Stephanie did a complete 180 and played a villainous role in Guatemala when she finally had power, backstabbing many players, but this meant she had no chance against any of the players in the endgame. However, the following season, we saw a new strategy take place in Survivor that countered the GOAT strategy. At the final 7 of Survivor Panama, Courtney was revealed to be the season's GOAT, as everyone made fun of her at the Sketchy Questions challenge.
Who never shuts up? Courtney. Sari has it right. Shane has it right. Take a step forward. Who is the biggest poser? Somebody's feelings about to get hurt.
What is a poser?
Reveal. The answer to what is a poser is you. Courtney was the right answer. Aris is the only one who got it right.
This was a catch-21 for Courtney, as yes, she was a GOAT, but she was now guaranteed a spot in the final 2, and would be at least $100,000 richer, with even her enemy Shane saying how much of a dream it would be to sit by her at the end. So, knowing Courtney was taking up one of her final 2 spots, Sari pulled off the infamous 3-2-1 blindside on Courtney to take the GOAT out of the game, making it easier for the non-GOATs to have a greater shot at making it to the end. A pure genius move, especially for somebody like Sari, who's a big-time player, but also has to rely on players taking her to the end, as she's no challenge beast.
Shane wants to take Courtney to the final 2. He's told me that. Terry wants to take Courtney to the final 2. That, to me, makes Courtney the most dangerous person out here. I want to kind of mess up Terry's plans and mess up Shane's plans, and hopefully we get rid of Courtney next, and then it could possibly give me, Aris, and Danielle a little more leverage in this game.
In season 13, we were introduced to the first final 3 in Survivor. The big knock the haters have against the final 3 is that it's still pretty much a 2-person race, as it's very rare to have a final 3 where all finalists have a shot to win. This is what happened in the Cook Islands, as Becky had no shot to win in this final 3 scenario. However, she was anything but a GOAT, as if this season was a final 2 like the 12 seasons prior. She beat Sundra, and actually has a pretty decent shot at beating Ozzy, which was the most likely final 2 scenario. But the following season, we got the first true final 3 GOAT in Dreams. Again, it's hard to label Dreams, and for that matter Cassandra, as GOATs, as they went up against Earl, who is one of the greatest winners of all time, and there's no shame in losing to a great player. But due to Dreams' backstab on Yao-Man from the card deal, Dreams went from a respected final 3 member who simply wasn't beating Earl to absolutely despised by the jury. In Survivor Gabon, we got arguably the most bizarre case of a GOAT ever in Sugar Kuiper. Sugar, as funny as it is to believe, absolutely dominated Gabon, as she controlled many of the tribal councils, and was able to make close connections, in large part due to her public idol. However, despite playing far and away the best game out of the final 3, she received no votes, and the main reason for this was because she didn't even really want to win.
Sugar?
I don't know. I'm not necessarily think you have to vote for me, but it would be nice.
Huh. Okay.
Survivor Gabon, ladies and gentlemen, how can you not love it? Let's now talk about the most famous GOAT in Survivor history, Russell Hantz. Russell is of course a legend of Survivor, essentially breaking the game, with his combined 6 idol finds in Samoa and Heroes vs Villains, and of course he made plenty of other big moves along the way, as he made it to day 39 in both those seasons. Yet, despite this insane gameplay, Russell was absolutely despised by both the season 19 and 20 juries, as yes, he was a great player when it came to strategy, but his social game was a much different story.
Do you think I care about how you are as a man?
I think you don't give a damn about anything but yourself.
About you or
I
your family.
know. I don't think you give a damn about anybody but yourself.
The second coming of Christ.
You can say whatever you want. Because it doesn't really matter anymore.
You're such a dumbass, Rupert.
You could argue that Natalie and Sandra won these seasons in a way that Clay Jordan was hoping to win back in Thailand with the original GOAT strategy, as both Sandra and Natalie attached onto the big-time player in Russell, knowing they could beat him in the end, while also realizing Russell thought that he could beat both of them at the end, since he thought they were in fact the GOATs, not realizing he was the true GOAT all along.
My strategy was to be myself, and at the end of the day, you know, I wasn't out to get anybody or make anybody look bad. Russell made it clear he was okay with making people look bad.
Sash is another interesting GOAT, as even though most fans agree he played the best game out of the final 3 from Survivor Nicaragua, the mortgage incident with Jane that wasn't shown on TV made the jury disregard him entirely. Natalie and Philip are notable GOATs for basically gifting Rob the win, as they were both major parts of the buddy system. Albert and Scoopin were both delusional GOATs from their respective seasons, as while they didn't play bad per se, they simply had no chance against their competition, which is something they didn't realize until it was too late. In season 28, we got another legendary GOAT in Cass. Cass became a public GOAT in Survivor Cagayan after Spencer said what everyone was thinking when she flipped on Sarah.
Cass, 0 chance of winning the game.
And yeah, Cass didn't exactly do anything to improve her GOAT status during the Cagayan post-merge, as she got into many confrontations and arguments with her fellow castaways. But for the first time since season 2, a player's GOAT perception came back to haunt them, as Wu felt that Cass wasn't deserving to be in the final 2, and the jury would in fact look down on Wu for taking her to the end. This of course would go on to be a $1 million mistake for Wu, and a $3 million life-changing decision for Tony. So in a way, as ironic as it is, Cass being such an outspoken Survivor GOAT ended up being the catalyst for Tony to become the king of Survivor. In season 32 Survivor Ko Wrong, we got arguably the most heroic GOAT in Survivor history in Tai Trang. If you would have told the viewers at the start of the season that Tai would end up being a final 3 GOAT, they would probably have laughed in your face, as Tai was literally put on the beauty tribe for his inner beauty and displayed so much gratitude throughout the season. However, this didn't stop him from playing a ruthless and somewhat sloppy game, resulting in a 0-vote finals finish, with no chance to win pretty much any final 3 scenario. But again, Tai was a massive fan favorite, and even created the modern day fan favorite award in the Sia prize money. It's so interesting to me that Tai was literally awarded $50,000 by a megastar due to his massive popularity, but yet that popularity on screen didn't translate to the Survivor jury. Let's finish off the video with some modern day GOATs, with the first probably being the most frustrating GOAT in Survivor history in Laurel Johnson. Many players end up being GOATs due to their lack of self-awareness, a failed strategy, or just simply had a terrible trait that they couldn't hide on Survivor, making them an easy day 39 beat. Laurel, however, was none of that. She was a well-respected player, formed plenty of bonds, and had a great mind for the game, as she realized she would be a GOAT if she sat next to Wendell and Dominic in the end. And yet, despite knowing this, she never made a move to take one of them out. To the frustration of Survivor fans watching, Laurel wasted chance after chance to turn on Dom and Wendell, and became a textbook example of nobody to blame but yourself when it comes to being a GOAT in Survivor.
I had been thinking I gotta get Wendell out of here tonight, but I want to do it the right way. And if he did finish first today and could have won immunity, it almost doesn't feel right to send him home. I'm going with the smart move rather than the big move tonight.
In seasons 37, 38, and 39, we saw 3 females get a 3rd place finish with 0 votes in Angelina, Julie, and Nora. And they were all portrayed in the same way, as despite being decent players with big personalities, the edit went out of its way to make them look paranoid at certain points throughout the game, because in this fast-paced modern-day version of Survivor, the editors need an easy way to explain a GOAT finish for certain players. We finish off the video with the most recent Survivor GOAT in Xander. Not only is Xander the most recent GOAT, but he just might be the most confusing as well. Again, with likable GOATs like Sugar, Matt, and Ty, we got clear justification on why they were GOATs despite their positive edit. With Xander, we didn't really get anything. I mean, one could say he didn't play his advantages to the best of his abilities, but other than that, he went from the bottom to the top, won 2 immunities, and obviously played extremely hard, especially compared to the much quieter Erica. But as it turns out, he was terrible socially, making no bonds with anyone in the post-merge, and nobody bothered to target Xander and his public idol due to him being an easy beat at the end. This unfortunately sparked much controversy for the casuals, as while the hardcore fans who read exit interviews knew that Xander would be a GOAT, the casuals were flabbergasted to see him receive 0 votes after what seemed to be a good underdog Survivor run.
More specifically, I wanted to ask, was there a point in the game where you had a good read in terms of social awareness, where you used that to your advantage to make a move in the game?
Yeah, I would say my social awareness.
So there you have it, guys, the history of GOATs in Survivor. Let me know in the comments who your favorite GOAT in Survivor history is, and give your predictions on who you think the GOAT of Survivor 42 will be, or if there will be one at all. If you like this video, then be sure to smash that like and subscribe button for more fun Survivor content like this. And with all that said, have a good one, guys, and I'll see you next time.